What happens when artists set fire to a piano or place a guitar in a river? Is this only meant to shock?
Or does this radical treatment invite us to see, feel, or hear something else about what we think music is?
I am Heidi Hart, an environmental researcher and musician.
And I'm Beate Schirrmacher, literary scholar here at Linnaeus University.
Why would anyone destroy a musical instrument? In the news, you might see images of the Taliban burning instruments in Afghanistan. At a rock concert, a musician might smash a guitar in a moment of musical intensity. You might go to an art museum and see a video of a burning piano. These events evoke different emotions and associations, which also depend on the viewer's background and ways of valuing musical instruments. But when we look closer into instruments placed outdoors, something happens. The very act undermines our understanding of what is culture and nature and how we usually treat them. We, therefore, are studying the destruction of instruments in artistic and ecological context, not simply for the sake of ruining a piano, but as a way of reframing human cultural materials. We think about decomposing as a new way of imagining musical instruments and their roles in the environment. Composer Anea Lockwood first began burning and drowning pianos in the late 1960s, a time of cultural questioning in the art world and beyond. Lockwood thought of these works not as destructive, but as transformational. She called them piano transplants, inspired by human heart transplants. What we see and hear in these works is a radical displacement or renaturing of pianos as they burn into what might look like firewood, become overgrown with plants on the edge of the forest, or slowly sink into a pond. During the COVID-19 lockdown, the New York-based Issue Project Room art organization developed a long, slow watch party featuring 3 performances of Lockwood's piano transplants. This opportunity to slow down and experience pianos burning and decaying, sometimes played by human hands in their out-of-tune and literally decomposing states, provoked new questions about what these works tell us in a time of ecological crisis. They also call up questions of carbon released into the atmosphere through fire and what will happen to human culture when sea levels rise and cities flood. We invite you to follow our close watching and listening to discover something else after the first shock and curiosity.
When a piano is set on fire or placed outdoors, we might at first take it as an attack against music and the values attached. Yet musical instruments also are bodies that sound and move. And in this way, they are very close to living beings, but not quite. When they are treated badly, we therefore might feel strongly about the destruction, although we know that no living being is hurt. Like when you watch a surgery, you know there is no pain involved, but you might still flinch. The first reaction to these works might be a kind of shock. However, we want to ask what these works mediate and how they transform our understanding of cultural media such as music. When we explore the interplay of materials, of senses, elements and media involved, we notice a series of fundamental shifts. The burning, planted or drowned piano moves beyond conventional distinction of the man-made and the natural, of music or noise, of in tune or out of tune. For instance, we no longer primarily listen for music. Instead, the elements of fire, air and water bring forth the material of the instruments in a quite brutal way. The fire, for instance, makes us perceive a huge amount of firewood in the shape of a piano. But slowly the metal frame protrudes with copper wires in the shape of a harp or a ribcage. The burning piano may start with spectacular sights, but guides its audience into a close listening. Fire and piano sound together in unpredictable ways. The wood crackles and whines, and we are used to that, but the strings of the harp respond to the heat with a humming tone. When the planted piano is played, the clapper of the wooden hammers makes us hear the intricate mechanism in itself, and not the sounds of the wires they are expected to hit. The mechanical construction is out of human control. All parts glued together become visible by disintegrating, and the covers of the keys are scattered like autumn leaves. This is a much slower and less dramatic decomposition process. A man-made instrument slowly adapts into a new environment. Small, nearly unnoticeable changes convey a sense of deep time, a sense that otherwise is difficult to grasp. Even the piano in the pond seems a very odd sight at first, but then the mirroring surface of a lake creates new shapes, forms new holes. The decomposing pianos push us to perceive more radical and elemental connections that go beyond our understanding of cultural meaning. By standing in strange environments and being devoured by them, they mediate not man-made music, but convey a sense of connectedness and an interplay with the elements. Fire, air, water bring forth the materials and their construction we usually ignore. The instruments, in return, make visible how our existence is formed by the elements we usually take for granted. We usually take the elements for granted, we use them as domesticated tools or meet them as unleashed violent forces. The peculiar combination of instruments and elements together bring forth an equal, ambiguous way of perception. We might identify or want to identify with a threatened piano that is burning, while in fact we as humans engage with the environment more like fire, in constant need of fuel and oxygen, and in each of our cells as well as in the larger world. Anea Lockwood's piano transplants radically destabilize the expected human position of being in control. Classical music especially is dependent on intricate instruments and skilled musicians. These performances instead ask what happens when we get out of control and what is to be discovered in an interplay between man-made material and non-human engagement, of taking a step to the side and listening.
Our research shows how these destroyed and decaying pianos actually help us to imagine human culture becoming more embedded in the natural world. We argue that the decentering conventions of human musical practice allow for more humility, surprise, and ecological entanglement as the wood and metal of a piano return to the environment. Artists and musicians are currently working with instruments in radically new ways in order to relate more closely to the natural world. These artists include Julia Adzuki, who has strung a large ash tree trunk with piano wires. It's possible to lie inside the instrument and play the copper wires, which are tuned to the overtone series of familiar intervals, and to feel the whole tree trunk vibrate. Stefan Östersjö, who places string instruments in trees and streams, demonstrates how they resonate with wind and water. These practices put listening and response first over planned performance that strives for artistic perfection. Alongside exploring the work of others, I have been working with a harp transplant in my garden in North Carolina in the US. Like Lockwood with her pianos, I've chosen a harp that was already in less than ideal condition in order to subject it to the elements. Over the past 9 months, the harp has been exposed to heavy rain, high humidity, strong winds, months of heat, wind-blown leaves, winter ice, and numerous insects and spiders. Webs sometimes appear between the strings in the early morning. One beetle has laid a perfect row of eggs along one of the lower strings. The outer layer of the soundboard's wood has separated, leaving room for more miniature habitats. When I now play the transplanted harp once every few weeks, it's long and far out of tune. Some strings that normally sound higher resonate at the same pitch as their neighbors or sound lower now. I've had to let go of my trained musician's sense of upward and downward scales and of predictable intervals. Now when I play, I listen and respond to bird calls or other sounds in the neighborhood, even mechanical ones like the beep of a truck backing up. My playing is more improvisational and gestural, a change that has surprised me in my indoor playing on an in-tune harp as well.
Overall, our project has helped us to appreciate what renatured instruments can do in shifting awareness towards ecological entanglement.
We have explored different forms of media, not just in the materials of the piano and in the films of Lockwood's works, but also in terms of air, water, and fire.
And we have discovered histories of pianos outside the European classical tradition.
We hope our research will encourage more experimentation with musical materials in the larger environment and slower, more embodied engagement with human and non-human sound making.